This is the Slots and Sockets Podcast, episode number 72. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime,
Turbo Penguin.
Happy Sunday, Turbo. So we're recording a little early because, it's summer and random things have a habit of happening in summertime that kind of change our recording schedule. So, speaking of random things, we have a couple of interesting stories that cropped up this past week. Where do we want to start with this?
Well, I think the coolest piece that I see is Nvidia's pulling the at least some. I don't know. We're seeing some more details on the N1x.
Yep.
And
their SoC. Yeah.
They're all inclusive chip that's going to have both your CPU and your GPU. And
not just any CPU though, but it's going to be 20 cores of ARM.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I know for the title, we're kind of comparing it to Tegra, which it was okay, but yeah, it did not last. But I mean, this looks like a pretty interesting product. Yeah, I mean, I had a Tegra powered phone. The Nexus 3 was a really solid phone for quite a while, but I mean, this is actually more of a desktop or laptop part than it is a mobile part. So
the question is, and this is where a lot of these, because I have the same thing of the Ryzen AI 395, right? The question is when will we actually get these packages in a design that you can buy, and how is it competitive with the current form? N1x is not formally finished. Okay. While they did have a picture of it and have a box of it running, or not running, but Jensen held it on screen at the last reveal for Blackwell. We don't have final specs, and so and I would say, even if those are final specs that we're looking at, the real question I come back to is that, okay, that's great. If we see this in 9 months or a year and a half, then we have a very different view of this product. If I can get my hands on this today and it works really well, then that's a very interesting piece to have today. But in a year or 9 months, that could be a very different view from a performance perspective. It's enticing because on the GPU side, you're getting essentially a 5070.
Well, that's kind of what they're targeting. The Geekbench scores are coming in below a 2050 right now, according to the article I'm looking at on it.
Well,
but again, that's early silicon.
But that's the core count. It's 6,144 Blackwell cores on 4 nanometer.
Yeah, it is Blackwell. Yeah,
it is the same core count. Now, obviously, the question is how have they built the connector between the ARM processing side, and the other half of it is what we don't really know is it how is it using memory? Is it a standardized set of system memory and video memory that gets shared? I don't know.
Are they doing a
that
PS5
could be a very interesting? That could be a very interesting thing. But if it's a slower overall from GDDR7, that could have look. The devil's in the details of N1x.
Yep.
But I really think that why we're seeing some of this is because the 395 AI Ryzen from AMD, we're starting to see some pre-orders. You're starting to actually see some devices actually hit the shelves.
Yep.
And it's a very impressive piece. It's a little on the pricey side because I think it's early. I do expect the prices of that to come down, but from a performance perspective, it's a really interesting place of where you would fit this. And so I just look at this and I think the N1X is an interesting piece. Look, I would say if you can get it out to market quick enough, it's really exciting. I don't think they're that close. Or maybe I should say this. I don't think from a retail perspective, I don't think we're going to see it that quick. But then my other concern of the N1X is, where are you going to place this where you don't have, where your software isn't crap? Because I do not have faith in Windows for ARM. Linux, I think, is a better option, but then on the gaming side of things, gaming has gotten much better. But I think if something like this were to maybe find its way into a Steam machine, that's a really interesting piece too. But
yeah,
I don't foresee that. And that's why I'm wondering where the target here is, because AMD has great relationships and has done all of the Steam decks, all the prototyping that Valve has done has been on Nvidia AMD APUs.
Yep. Consoles.
Nintendo is the one console that but even then I'd make the argument that's a really old SoC. That was done 2 years ago, and they're finally getting out. And that's not an Nvidia issue. That's a Nintendo being Nintendo thing.
I call them no mindo for a reason.
But the where do you go from here? And I think that is a really good question, because if you're just going to say, oh, it has Windows, I have very little faith that Windows and ARM are going to be happy.
Well, I mean, how many times have we seen Windows and ARM try to launch? I mean, we just saw Samsung with their Copilot laptops launching with ARM on Windows, and they weren't great. Now, if Nvidia can resolve,
spent a ton of money on that, trying to get that to go, and that just didn't work out very well.
Snapdragon still sucks. Like, and I think part of the problem is it doesn't have
software. It's software. I mean,
it's the OS.
And I think the problem is that you have so many legacy programs that aren't going to get supported from developers, that even if you had Windows working, it's almost like you would need some form of translation layer.
That's what they do.
And I think that maybe that's where some of this is failing on some of these legacy pieces. But even then, it's like, I don't know. I just don't have a lot of faith in Windows and ARM.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you there. I think the path forward really for general computing is going to be Linux. I don't see, unless Microsoft makes some huge changes in Windows 12. Well, I really don't see them surviving much longer in terms of being an OS vendor.
Well, hold up. I mean, Microsoft is the one who gave Qualcomm a crap ton of money to get the Snapdragon and ARM on Windows a thing. Pretty much doing all of the development on the software and a ton of the hardware development for that.
Right.
Now, the real question is that where does that put, and what does Microsoft do? Maybe Microsoft looks at Nvidia and says, hey, look, maybe this Qualcomm thing really wasn't the good thing here. And maybe this is where we need to be putting in working with Nvidia. Now that would make a little more sense. Nvidia probably on that piece, they don't want, it's clear because Nvidia could very easily go out and get a x86 license. Nvidia could very easily, at this point, buy Intel.
I mean, they could buy Intel with the change between Jensen's couch cushions.
I mean, they, in all honesty, they could buy a lot of, of processing options. They could buy Qualcomm. I mean, so there's opportunities for them, and why they're continuing to do this, it makes me believe that internally they're looking at this saying, we don't have faith that x86 is the way of the future.
Right.
I'm torn because I think that there's probably some truth to that, but I don't know if I would write off x86 right now.
Yet. I mean, Apple's doing a lot to show that a proper ARM implementation can be very powerful. I mean, I will hate on a Mac 7 days a week and twice on Sunday, but I'm not going to lie to you and say that, the Macs with ARM chips are dogs. They're not. They are very good performers. And they are an in-house designed chip. So it's all designed by Apple for one purpose, to run their operating system as fast and as power efficiently as they possibly can. And it does well. And, if a Mac fits your usage model, more power to you. But I think that just kind of goes to show that there is some room in the market for ARM, for not necessarily Windows, but for some sort of consumer application. But I really think, based on the presentation that we saw at CES, where they talked about these N1x machines, that they're looking at building these out as microclusters, where, let's say you're an AI developer who's working on a big data AI project that's supposed to run on a large cluster. Well, you can't just do that on a single machine. You actually need some sort of cluster to test with, and it's really expensive to test on the actual hardware. So get 4 or 5 of these N1X boxes and stack them together, network them up, run, whatever clustering Linux you need to host it, and rock and roll. Because I mean, Blackwell really is built for AI. That's its primary thing. Why do you think our base frame rates on the 50 series aren't a significant improvement over the 40 series? It's because they put out everything into AI.
Yeah, and the only way they can use AI in this is to say DLSS. I mean,
I don't think this is a consumer play. I think we will see consumer stuff, but I don't think this is primarily a consumer play. I think this is meant more for getting their hardware out into offices and into business technology companies that work with AI and work with stuff where having low power consumption on the CPU, but having a lot of cores is going to be really helpful. And that's kind of where ARM plays well, is when you have a boatload of cores for general processing and then a boatload of GPU cores, which, in some of the form factors we've seen, cramming a 5070 into something like a little minis forum box along with a fully fat CPU, that could be pretty awesome.
The implementation, and the question is that I don't know if N1X is really designed for gamers.
No.
I think the question is that could you find like a minis forum where they say, hey, we could use this to play games, absolutely. But I think you're right. I think that from Nvidia's perspective, they're going after the professionals to sit there and say, the engineering firms, okay, yeah, you need a bunch of compute learning. Well, just stack 6 of these in front of your desk, and it'll start scaling as much as you have this. And if you want more, just stack another one on top of it. And
Yeah.
if you want more, then you just get an N2X and it'll use all the ones and they'll start using the 2X. I mean, that's where I think that they're probably looking at this as saying, the ability to really push that feature. But then, from, the user's perspective, sit there like, from a, design perspective to sit there and say, hey, I want more AI, or we're using more AI pieces now, and pull that off of what the PC is typically using and give you some more options as far as what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just kind of talking back and forth about this, I kind of came up with a crazy, wild, out of left field theory. What if Nvidia is actually trying to go after Apple? What if Jensen is like, we're going to be the new Apple. We're going to come out with our own Nvidia laptop running our own flavor of Unix or Linux or something that's just designed to do our stuff. And if you want to throw Proton on it and play games, go for it. That's your call. But it's going to be a business machine running Unix, running or Linux or something along those lines. And yeah, it's going to be an Nvidia laptop instead of an Apple laptop.
We've had a lot of rumors that something like that was, and I wouldn't put it past Nvidia of actually trying and having prototypes of some of these things.
Sure.
Even in the past, running running like x86 in the past and ARM, in the future. I mean, look, it makes sense for them to be looking at these options. I think the loaded question is, from a business model, where do they see this moving forward? And where do they see the value for the shareholders? Because at the end of the day, and I think that gamers can at least appreciate this really well. They don't care about gamers. They care about shareholders. They care about stock values.
Yep.
They care about things that sell and make them more money. And if they feel that business enterprising is the future and where they can make the most money for them, then guess what they're going to do? They're going to do that. And can they multi-purpose something like this into something that could play games? Possibly. But at the same time, if that costs them too much money, I would not sit there and say, this isn't really a gaming thing. This is an enterprise piece.
Yep.
And
yeah.
I think N1x is an interesting piece. I think from our perspective, we look at it from a gaming side of things and sit there and say, oh my gosh, it's so good. And it could be.
I don't think the first generation is going to be. I think it's going to be a lot like, because that's the thing, is like, you start gaming on a Mac laptop right now, even though the GPU is on par with some of our desktop GPUs, it just doesn't perform. The performance just isn't there because the OS isn't built for it. The drivers aren't built for it. The games are not necessarily, like, if you have a game that's specifically written for Mac OS, then yeah, it's going to run well. But from what I'm seeing, if you're running it through Proton or some translation layer, that just, it struggles. And, I think to fix that, we're going to need somebody like Nvidia who has feet in both the consumer gaming and in the server market to really push that forward. Speaking of pushing things forward, though, we got some interesting news from SK Hynix. They have 3 gigabyte GDDR7. More memory, more problems. Or no,
Well,
more textures.
and this isn't,
Yay.
yeah, more textures. I mean, this isn't a huge surprise because we knew that Super Series was focusing on a 30% bump. So going from a 2 gig chip to a 3 gig chip. So no surprise there.
Yep.
The other question I would say is that, some of the AMD rumors for possibly a 9080 have picked them using GDDR7. That would make sense because right now they're still using GDDR6 in the
Not even
9000
6X.
series. Not
It's
even
just straight
6X, just 6. That would make a ton of sense for if they do that. I'm not sold. I don't think that's a legitimate thing that we're going to see in 9000 series. No. I don't think we're going to see a broadening of the 9000 series. I think that all of their time and effort's going to be back to, moving forward to the next generation of Radeon. Yeah. But I would say that we will see a Super Series. And, if you look at buying advice from Turbo, it's very, very clear that any Nvidia product you should buy is either a TI or a Super.
Right.
And I would go back to, going back and looking at all of the past Nvidia generations and saying all of them are like this. Every, like, a 40, a 5070, not good. A 5070 Ti, good. The only ones that I would say are going to buck that trend is the 90 series.
Yep.
And going back, 90 series has always is, and they from a longevity. I mean, heck, even a 3090 right now is still relevant to the gaming market.
Yep.
And that's because it has the extra VRAM. But if you looked at a 3080, that's struggling because it has only 10 and 12 gigs of RAM.
Right.
So again, if we see a Super Series, which I would highly recommend that we would, Nvidia feels like they can sell it to you and you'll buy it, which, consumers are really good at just, lemmings on anything that Nvidia makes. It'll sell really well. The question is, and we saw this with the 40 series. 40 series had availability issues, but the 40 Super Series was actually available at MSRP at launch and didn't have the huge demand problems that we had with the regular 40 series. If you looked at the 40 series, the 4080 Super was the buy of all time. If you got a 4080 Super at MSRP, you're not interested in the 5080 at all because, to be honest, the 5080 isn't that much faster.
Yeah.
You really are about the same.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, a 5080 Super is going to be a great card for gamers. And one that, as long as that continues the trend, one that I'm still going to say is the way to go. And that's going to tell me that when the 60 series comes out, it's going to be a hard pass to sit there and say, well, let's wait for the 60 Supers.
Right.
Because the Supers is where it's at. Because now the loaded question is on the Supers is, I don't know if we're going to see anything other than memory increases, because the 5080 is already using the full die already. And if you're not getting core increases, and the only thing you're getting is
memory capacity,
memory capacity,
not even memory bandwidth, because the current rumor on the 5080 Super is 8 3 gig chips, where, if I remember correctly, the current 5080 has 8 2 gig chips. Now, interesting thing that might open the door for that we kind of talked about before stream is one of the issues that a lot of these modern cards have is the boards are flexing because there's just so much mass in the cooler and there's so much heat getting pumped into the PCB that just over time, if you don't have your card fully supported by a good bracket or some sort of retention mechanism that takes the weight off of the PCI Express slot and holds it by the frame of the card and keeps the card straight, you're going to end up with either a corner of the GPU desoldering from the board, so you're going to lose memory channels, or you're going to have memory that's desoldering in spots, just from the
I
heat
mean,
and
that's
stress
just
and
gonna,
flex. And
and that's just gonna translate to failures
right,
and crashing. I mean,
right,
it's not like
but
you're gonna see, oh, well, I only have 15 gigs. No, that's not how this works.
yeah,
It's just gonna stop working, and you're gonna be like playing a game, and it's like fatal error and blue screen. You're like, what the
what
heck?
the
And
crap? Yeah. And
I
so
mean,
one of the things that I see potentially becoming a thing if this trend keeps going is you send in a 5080 to somebody like Northwest Repair or one of these other repair shops that actually does the fixes on these GPUs, because good lord, you're not going to buy a new $1,500 graphics card just because it costs a couple $100 to resolder some chips properly. No, you're gonna pay to get it repaired because your card's out of warranty and you don't want to spend another 2-3 grand on a card. Now what I can see happening is if everything stays the same and it's a service they could offer reliably, I could see somebody like that saying, "Hey, look, we got to reball your memory anyway. How about you pay us another $200 and we'll upgrade you to 24 gigs on your 5080?" I mean, we're already in there. We're already doing the work that's required to do the upgrade as it is. Just pay us for the parts and we'll do the labor at the original cost or maybe a little extra. Um, and then that would also give them spare chips that they could use in other boards where somebody doesn't necessarily want an upgrade, but the chip cooked. Because sometimes when that happens, it will cook the memory chip, it could cook the GPU. Any number of things can happen in that situation. And so, you know, I see this as a potentially a good thing both for repair and for people that want to get a little bit of extra longevity in terms of their GPU lifespan, because I'll tell you one of the things I'm noticing with my XTX going from the 6900 XT. Hey, I actually said it right the first time. Cool. Um, I think I'm finally remembering it now that I don't even own it. And so one of the big things I'm noticing is that games that run Unreal Engine that had a lot of shader stutter in the first 15-20 minutes of gameplay, Fortnite being a prime example, um, having that extra video memory on the card really made up for a lot of that shader stutter. And so, I don't know if it's the fact that the 7900 XTX is, 50% faster than the 6900 XT, or if it's that I have that extra 24 gigs, but even in the same system, it made a huge difference going to the XTX. So, you might see an improvement in at least some of the experience with gaming. And on the other hand, if you're using the card for AI tasks or for GPU compute or anything that uses the GPU memory more than gaming does, you could potentially see a significant benefit. You're doing like image generation, for example, playing with Comfy UI or Stable Diffusion or Flux or what have you. Those are very memory hungry applications. And even if you're not getting an increase in memory bandwidth or an increase in GPU horsepower, having that extra space for AI to stretch its legs really makes a difference. So it's something that if it is a possibility could potentially benefit some people and get some extra life out of these cards that rather than having it keep giving Jensen a new yacht every 6 months.
I mean, the question will be, if you're going to use GB203 for the next Super Series, okay, so you're using the same chip, okay, we know that there's speed in adding power. We know that the 5080, that Nvidia specifically has limitations on how much power you can push through to it. We know that that's an area that Nvidia is actively limiting board partners. Okay, so if that all is correct, the only way really to get a 5080 super faster, other than adding memory, but I don't think that right now we're seeing games use 16 gigs on a consistent basis. Okay, unless you're on like 8K. Okay,
Right.
So if that's the case, the memory is not going to be the slouch. I think the only way to do this is add power. Now, if they do that, the question will be, and one of the things we've seen with the 4080 to the 5080, we've seen an uptick in power, but we have not seen a one-to-one relationship as we increase power that we get increased speed.
Yep, it's more logarithmic. You got to dump a bunch more power to get a little bit of speed.
Exactly, and I think that that's what we're really going to see here is that Blackwell, while it is going to be using more power, which is correct, the 50 series uses more than the 40 series, but we're not seeing the huge jumps. Even as much, because what is Nvidia saying? Oh, DLSS. No. Let's just take this out and just say, call a spade, frame a frame, no fake frames here. A 4080 Super is really close to a 5080 vanilla. And had you bought a 4080 Super, you'd be super happy because right now, I mean, let's see, a 5080.
The only thing you're not getting out of that is multi-frame gen, which
I'd make the argument that that you shouldn't be using it. I mean, at a 5080, I mean, come on.
Well, and to kind of go back to your power thing, and one of the reasons I flashed the logo there is Jay's 2 Cents did some interesting stuff with power. He has a 5090 that can pull 1600 watts and turned a Corsair power supply into a gigabyte power supply. And by that, I mean an exploding power supply. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing, some people who are starting to play with BIOSes because some of these higher power limit BIOSes have gotten out and have leaked, and people are flashing gigabyte cards, which have better starting clocks with this custom ROG Astral Extreme OC BIOS, and they're getting insane levels of power. Now, granted, they're pulling 2100 watts. They're pulling more power from the wall outlet than a typical American household can handle. So we're talking 2100 watts for a GPU. Now in Europe, that's less of a problem because you're running 240 volts, and a lot of those places use ring bus for their power, or like ring termination. So you can pull quite a bit more through a single outlet. But I think kind of what we're seeing here is Nvidia could potentially be pulling a lot more power than they are to actually get more performance, but they're kneecapping Blackwell on the power front.
Is this not precursor to what we're going to see with the Super Series? Maybe this is, Nvidia going to Asus, who is, I would assume, well, PNY is technically their preferred partner, but I think from an overclocking perspective, I would view that Nvidia would probably like Asus. To a lot of respect, because PNY doesn't have that market.
Right.
But it's a really interesting concept, because if you can really pull that much power, that's a really, really fast card. I think the problem is that if you can realistically do that and not fry cards, which or power supplies, depending on what the issue is,
yeah. Well,
it's
for that
a
much
very
power,
fast thing. But most people, I mean, the 99% of people should never touch this or even think about doing this.
no. Yeah, do not do this. This falls under the realm of doing dumb stuff. And what's our number one rule? Don't do dumb stuff. Now, there is some fun to be had in doing dumb stuff. And what we're seeing is the people on the top of the leaderboards are throwing these overpowered BIOSes at their 5090s.
Well, I think a 5090, the fastest right now is actually a 5090D, because Hall of Fame has a board that's got two high power connectors, and it's legitimately using that.
Yep.
And they've got a really fast extreme BIOS that, overclockers are really pushing, to the max. So, in all honesty, the question is does any of this have Nvidia's blessing? Or
no, I bet you it doesn't. I would almost put money that it doesn't. Nvidia
It'll be interesting to see how Nvidia treats some of this, because it's obviously not high volume.
Yeah.
And I'll admit, if I had the ability, if I could go out and buy any board right now, I probably would be very interested in playing with a Hall of Fame version. Because the honest truth is that for us in the States, we don't get them. I've never had one. I've never played with one. I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
I've always really liked them.
They've always reviewed well too.
They've reviewed well. Yeah. They're always they look great with the white PCBs.
Yep.
They were the first ones to really do that.
But they're the only one to put two 12-volt high-powered connectors on their cards, so you have some safety margin.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the Super Series does. I don't think it's going to be extreme.
Here's the thing:
there will not be a 5090 Super.
I don't think there will.
Say that.
But you were kind of postulating what Nvidia could do to get more oomph on the GPU. The 5090D was effectively canceled. So what if they have a bunch of 5090D silicon
and then relaunched?
Right. So
it's been all over the place.
Oh no. I know it's been up and down and yes and no and in and out and all that fun stuff. So sorry, I didn't mean to make that reference. I'm a terrible person. But no, here's my crazy hypothesis. What if they have a bunch of 5090D chips that didn't quite make the grade to be a 5090D, but they're like, hey, it's the same pinout. We could just make it a 5080 Super. And boom, there's your 5080 with more cores on it, but not quite a 5090.
But here's the thing, a 5090 and a 5090D, they use the same number of CUDA cores, the same memory, and the same TDP.
Right.
So there was a difference between those. I don't know I don't know the difference between them. But what I will say is that the DV2 uses the core cores, but is really gimped on the memory on this time. So 24 gigs in only 384-bit bus, not the 512-bit.
Right.
So the throughput on the memory is where you're seeing the biggest change in the D versus the DV2. Now, the only reason that they're making the DV2 is for export rules, from what I understand, from the United States, and this is only going to be targeted towards China.
Right.
So the DV2 is not something that we expect to see. At the same time, I also think the 5090 DV2 is not really a gamer's card.
Mhm.
Well, I am sure some in the Chinese market will use it for gaming. I do not expect it. Now, with that being said, if we really compare that to what we're seeing or thinking the 5080 Super is going to be, really interesting. Still 24 gigs of RAM, only
Mhm.
256-bit bus. Okay, so really kind of a slowed down version, but then only 1,752 cores, so half of the 5090 DV2. So they're keeping a really big gap between the 80 and the 90 series.
Yeah.
And in the
It's
past,
not like the 40 series.
yeah, in the past, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah. The
Because if you
Super's
look
usually been 10% or so below the 5090 or the 90
exactly,
variant. So, yeah, I mean there's a lot of things that we could speculate on, and we could go back and forth all day. I mean, we've been jaw jacking on it for about almost 45 minutes now. So I think on that bombshell, it's
yeah.
time to call it a show. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time. And do remember to jump down the doobly-doo below and do all the algorithmic things, the like and subscribe and all that. And please leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.